Hey everybody, this is Spoonie, and today I want to go over a few games that I feel are terribly underrated in 2024. Not all of these titles are new, a few of them are a little bit older, but I tried to include a range of genres, so if you're looking for a new game that you might have missed, or something that isn't currently on the top sellers list, you're in the right place. I saved one of my all-time favorite games for the end, so make sure you stick around. First up is Wizardom. With the success of games like Ultra Kill, we have seen a lot of what have become known as boomer shooters coming and going. Although, to be fair, I think these are more like Gen X shooters, but that doesn't really have the same ring to it. In any case, if you grew up in the 90s or are even a little older, you probably have a special place in your heart for games like Doom, Hexen, and Wolfenstein 3D. And if you perked up a little bit when I mentioned Hexen, you're in luck, because Wizardom is basically a love letter to games like Heretic, Hexen, and Catacomb 3D. And when I say basically, I mean it literally is some of those games rolled into one. Some of the abilities are directly lifted from the aforementioned titles. It includes a level editor which should keep the game fresh and replayable, and while still in early access, the developers are releasing the second episode soon, and will be releasing the third and final episode with the 1.0 version of the game relatively shortly after. The game has a free demo, so you can check it out and see if you want to buy the full version, or if a quick trip down memory lane is enough to scratch that boomer shooter itch. And next on the list is Desynced. Desynced is an interesting game that you will probably either love or hate. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of mixed feelings on this one, and it's honestly not going to win any Game of the Year awards, at least not anytime soon. But that's not because the game isn't fun or interesting, it's because it requires a lot of time to learn and even more time to master. Desynced is what would happen if Factorio and Command & Conquer had a love child. You will slowly build up resource collection and automation against an evolving enemy while also battling environmental hazards known as blight. In Desynced, instead of building several different types of units, you'll build a select few units that can be customized in different ways. And this is, in my opinion, one of the best features of the game, because it allows you to quickly alter your units if you need them for something temporary like light skirmishing or new scouting missions. When those needs have passed, you can refit your vehicles and get them back to work mining or transporting goods. You'll have to develop technology and consider environmental hazards to continue your progression and expand. It's still in development, but the developers are active, working their way through the early access roadmap, and the game already feels relatively complete. I would only recommend this game if you're a fan of logistics games and want to lose hours trying to master automation. The game moves at a fairly slow pace, so in your first few runs, you're not just going to get instantly zerged by an AI enemy or a friend who might have more experience. Matches in Desynced can take a long time, so be prepared for some hours-long matches, and if you pick up this title, just know it's not really a casual game. Another game that's RTS adjacent is From Glory to Goo. It's a sci-fi survival real-time strategy game that challenges players to establish and expand a colony on an alien planet while combating shape-shifting goo. This goo can attack from various directions, including above you or below you. The game emphasizes resource management, strategic expansion, and survival against these waves of goo. Players will support and expand their colony in order to send resources back into space and upgrade their orbiting ships' manufacturing and weapons capabilities. The game includes a variety of factions, each with their own units and buildings that can be unlocked through research, and some which are made available to specific captains that can be leveled up as you progress. The game's environment is procedurally generated with several biomes, offering different strategic challenges each time you play. At the end of each match, whether you win or lose, you'll progress towards rewards which will keep the game replayable and interesting. If you're looking for a game that blends tower defense, real-time strategy, and colony sim together in a similar way to They Are Billions, you'll probably enjoy this title. From Glory to Goo is still in early access. The developers plan to add additional units, aliens, and a campaign mode. This next title entered early access a few years ago, but I feel like it's still a really underrated game. It's called Cosmoteer, and it's a spaceship design and simulation game that challenges players to build and manage their own spacecraft. The game offers a sandbox-like experience where creativity in design is crucial. You will need to strategically place ship components like engines, weapons, shields, and power generators, along with several other infrastructure elements like crew quarters and storage. The layout of those components will directly affect the performance of your ship during combat, so you'll need to plan carefully. The game features a physics-driven combat system where the positioning and orientation of your ship during combat will determine the outcome of skirmishes. For example, a well-placed hit from an enemy can knock out specific systems like shields, which will impact your ship's function in real time. Players can engage in battles against AI-controlled enemies or participate in multiplayer matches testing their ship designs against other players. When you first jump into the game, you'll engage in combat scenarios against AI opponents. These battles are fairly forgiving and focus on teaching you how to manage your ship during combat, including targeting, maneuvering, and power management. As you win battles and complete missions, you'll earn credits and sell off salvaged components in order to earn resources that can be used to upgrade your ship. You can also use what you have salvaged to make repairs and add upgrades in the field. As you progress, you'll be adding new technologies and components to your customized spaceships, along with hiring larger crews. You'll have to manage those crews as well, which adds a really fun layer of depth to the game. You'll need to make sure that you have enough crew members to manage all of your ship's systems, while also making sure that the corridors they use to move around the ship are well protected. If they aren't and your hulls are compromised during combat, you can easily lose crew members to the vacuum of space. You'll then have to manage repairs and a return journey to the nearest space station with a limited crew, and by extension, limited ship systems. If you aren't careful, you can easily find yourself stranded, losing your entire ship. This game is challenging enough that you won't just be steamrolling the galaxy within a few hours, and it also grows with you so that you aren't just mercilessly punished for exploring new areas. There's also a fleet manager which allows you to control multiple ships at once. You can have multiple ships or builds for different types of missions, or if you would rather just focus on scavenging and mining, you can do that as well. This is just a great game to play for 15 minutes or even several hours at a time. If you're enjoying this video, consider hitting that subscribe button. Each week, I come out with gaming news updates, reviews, and tutorials. I keep them short and straight to the point so you can get the information you need and then get back in the game. This one is a bit older, and I feel like it really never got the attention it truly deserved. It's still among the games I regularly recommend to people who are looking for something new to play. It's called War for the Overworld, and it's the spiritual successor to Dungeon Keeper. War for the Overworld even hired Richard Writings to do the voice acting work, so it even sounds exactly like a Dungeon Keeper game. A fun fact about Richard Writings, aside from doing voices for some of gaming's most iconic titles, he's also the voice of a few characters in Peppa Pig. This game is on sale right now for only about $6, and it goes on sale regularly because, after all, it is almost 10 years old. So if it's not still on sale when you're looking at it, I would recommend waiting for the next one. It still gets occasional updates, and it's not too graphics intensive. It was recently added to GeForce Now just last year, so it makes it really easy to play on the go or if you have an older system. Just like in Dungeons and Dungeon Keeper, you'll start out with a dungeon core and a handful of imps. You'll have to dig out and design your own dungeon that is appealing enough to attract a variety of creatures that will then work and fight for you. If you have played any of the Dungeon Keeper titles or Dungeons 1 through 4, then you'll be able to pick this up and jump in pretty much immediately. But even if you haven't, dungeon titles aren't too complicated, and they're a lot of fun to pick up and play for a few hours. This game does have multiplayer, which is personally my favorite way to enjoy dungeon games, and again, for only $6, it's a pretty low risk title to try out. I saved my personal favorite for last, and I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. Songs of Syx is one of the most underrated games on Steam, not just in 2024, but period. Developed by a solo developer, this game is crafted with passion by someone who not only regularly and clearly communicates with players, but also goes above and beyond, often sharing glimpses into not only what's changed, but also how it was changed. Following along with the development of this game has been a joy, and that is extremely rare. I have yet to be disappointed in any way with any of the updates this developer has put out. You'll have to excuse me if I fanboy out a little bit here, I'm just really impressed with this game. In Songs of Syx, you build a civilization by starting with a specific race or mix of races that each have their own distinct strengths and weaknesses, creating tons of unique and interesting replayability fitting almost all types of playstyles. You can create a melting pot of civilizations trying to live in harmony with one another, or a warlike xenophobic society that survives through conquest. Even if you play two games with the same race in the same style, you might be near different races or have different races incorporated into your civilization, and that's something you'll have to consider and play around. To be successful, you'll have to navigate housing, sanitary needs, food production, research, education, reproductive needs, manufacturing, military logistics, your own city's economy, as well as a dynamic world economy that can't just be flooded with a single item you're producing. Your population can grow into the thousands or even tens of thousands, and the larger it grows, the more difficult the game becomes. Unlike many city-state games where the game's difficulty tends to plateau and then just become a game of scale, Songs of Syx dynamically adjusts to your growth rate and population through the game's natural mechanics. The bigger you get, the harder the game is. To build a thriving society, you will need to not only consider the strengths of your inhabitants, but also their weaknesses. If you don't manage to satisfy a basic standard of living, you'll be facing rebellions and riots. You'll need city guards to put those down, and if your main race isn't proficient in combat, that's something you'll have to consider as well, because you'll need to fend off invaders and raiders, and when you're powerful enough, you can do some raiding and conquering of your own. But before you set out on a military campaign, you'll have to consider the logistics of supplying your army when it's on the road, along with the decreased workforce in your city. So just massing a population and sending them all out to fight isn't really an option, at least not one that will last for very long. Like all things in Songs of Syx, having ambitions of conquest will mean planning and coordination. The combat in this game is also really fun and dynamic enough that strategies matter. Numbers are obviously a factor in combat, but strategy and equipment can still overcome larger armies, and because your army is made up of citizens from your actual city, losing your army or having them be gone for too long can be devastating if you aren't prepared to support them. I plan to make a different video going over this game more in depth, but as you can clearly see, covering this game in depth is a bit like trying to cover Dwarf Fortress in depth. There's just a lot to go over. This game is personally one that I consider to be the gold standard of city-state games. I cannot overstate my recommendation for this game. It is worth every cent. And if you're unsure if it's for you, there's a free demo so you can give it a go and really get a feel for it before you spend money on it. The game hasn't reached its full release yet. It's in its later phases of early access, and the developer is aiming for a full release sometime in 2025. In the meantime, updates are regular and significant. You can play this game for hundreds of hours and still be learning. If you like Dwarf Fortress or any city-state games, I have no doubt you'll love this one. Hopefully I covered a game or two that you haven't heard of yet, and maybe even mentioned the next game you won't be able to put down. Don't forget to hit that like button, it really helps my channel, and if you want to stay up to date on gaming news and developments, make sure you subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.